Count Dooku was a visionary. He was cut short in his prime by the Jedi forces.
Do it.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 6 video. There's a whole bunch of Easter eggs and references, so we'll break it all down. It was like Cameo City. There were so many big actors cameoing in this. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes, and careful for spoilers if you have not seen the episode yet. We'll just start at the beginning, work our way through shot by shot, talking about Easter eggs and WTF moments, starting with the episode title. Guns for Hire is a reference to Bo-Katan's Night Owls mostly, who returned for the first time since the end of Season 2, and we find out what happened to them. Simon Cass, Sasha Banks came back as Cass Woves and Koska Reeves, and we meet a whole bunch more of them, like there are a bunch of Night Owls there. But remember, this is just meant to be one group of the Mandalorians that she's been sent to reunite, but of course the first place she would go to would be to her former Night Owls. Previously, Bo-Katan had explained to Mando in Episode 1 that they'd become privateers after abandoning her at the end of Season 2 when she returned without the Darksaber, which they pay off at the end of this episode too. And they'd just been using all the Imperial ships that they commandeered during Season 2 and before the events of Season 2 to work as mercenaries. The episode was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. If you didn't watch the Tales of the Jedi episodes, Bryce Dallas Howard is also now the canon voice of Yaddle, who does not speak the backwards speech like Yoda speaks normally.
I guess word travels fast.
Well, or statements to the council were rather surprising.
Away, put your weapon! I mean you no harm. I am wondering, why are you here?
Apparently Yoda is the only being of his race who speaks like that, confirming that when Grogu does eventually speak like a normal person, like speaks basic, he'll speak normally. The actual opening scene is of a Quarren ship traveling to Trask, the same planet that Mando met Bo-Katan and the Night Owls on. There's a lot of references to that episode and a lot of music cues, like a lot of theme music for that episode towards the end of this episode. That was the planet that he was taking Frog Lady to, where the other Quarren were working, because it was an aquatic planet, which is their natural environment. Their homeworld is Mon Cal, just like the Mon Calamari race, which they referenced during this opening scene. They're originally from the same planet, and their peoples have just been at war for a long time. But this is why the Quarren ship has similar design language to the Mon Calamari capital ships. Their Captain Shaggoth is played by Christine Adams, who's from Black Lightning, rejuvenating inside a water tank. This isn't meant to be like a medical Bacta tank, it's just their species needs water, like a fish needs water. She only needs to use it occasionally, as we see right after this, when she deactivates it while addressing the Mandalorians on Moff Gideon's former Imperial cruiser, when she thinks that they are still Imperials. They even have that little joke about her junior officer bringing her the little snack of some fish which he pours into her tank, like, here, have a little bite. The reason they have this tank on the bridge is so that she doesn't have to leave the bridge to stay properly hydrated. She can just do all the functions of being a captain, stay near all the critical systems while she's rejuvenating. The Imperial ship that they come upon winds up being Moff Gideon's former Imperial cruiser that's being piloted by Cass Woves and Koska Reeves, the other Night Owl Mandalorians, and we find out what they've been doing this whole time. Paying off Bo-Katan's earlier conversation with Mando in Episode 1, they've just been hiring themselves out as muscle to anyone who will pay their price. When she says her native language isn't basic, that's the common tongue, like the Star Wars word for English. The Quarren's native language is just called Quarrenese. They played for a big reveal, so most of you probably realized what was going on before they actually showed him on screen. They say they were hired by the Mon Calamari King to find his son, who's played by Harry Holland, another big cameo, Tom Holland's Spider-Man's real brother in the Marvel movies, that had run away with the Quarren because of a very Romeo and Juliet, Montagues and Capulets forbidden romance twist. Like the Mon Calamari was in love with the Quarren, their parents were trying to disallow it by force by hiring the Night Owls to bring him back. The whole conflict there between their two peoples, the Mon Calamari, the Quarren, and the Star-Crossed Lovers, is also meant to be a metaphor for all the Mandalorian clans coming together again. Warring cultures from a single planet that are trying to find a way to actually get along with each other and find peace. When he says they're very good at what they do, they're very loyal, that's also a reference to the whole way their culture works. Like when Bo-Katan beats Cass Woves in combat, the other Mandalorians, the Night Owls, agree to follow her again, and when she fulfills the terms of winning the Darksaber, like per their culture, she technically owns the Darksaber, they agree to be loyal to her again. They also use this as a bit of a joke too, like a bit of a dark twist when Koska Reeves says, "We're loyal, all it takes is a few credits to buy our loyalty," basically. I think that might be a sly wink at what happened with Moff Gideon, because there's still a lot of questions about who saved him, who rescued him. Was it his Dark Troopers, and did those Dark Troopers just have a Beskar alloy shell, and that's why it was embedded in the hull? Or was it another group of bad Mandalorians, like evil Mandalorians, whose allegiance had been purchased by Moff Gideon, maybe? You could also look at the whole star-crossed lovers thing from Warring Cultures as being a reference to Mando and Bo-Katan, but they haven't really done anything with their relationship arc recently. Like, they had the whole Darksaber arc at the end of the episode, but that really didn't have anything to do with their actual relationship. Even though right after this, when you see them for the first time in the episode, the vibe feels a lot like Space Dad and Space Mom taking the kid on a field trip. Like the three of them have become this family unit. You are now a clan of three. When he says their next contract is on Plazir 15, that's the pleasure planet where Bo-Katan and Mando are going with Grogu. I'm guessing there's a bit of a time jump, and Bo-Katan just learned that the Night Owls had gone to Plazir 15. When you actually see them, you notice that Grogu is sitting right next to her, like literally right next to her up in front, and she starts talking to him. Katie Sackhoff also told some funny stories about this. Between takes when they were filming, she would also talk to the Grogu doll, just say casual things to it, but she didn't realize that the puppeteers' mics were still active, so the puppeteers that were operating the Grogu doll could hear everything that she was saying, so the Grogu doll would start reacting to everything that she was saying, freaking her out just a little bit. But Grogu sitting so close to her is a sign of how close he's grown to her, metaphorically and literally, how much he trusts her, like now, because he's starting to think of her as his surrogate mother, the same way that he thinks of Mando as his surrogate father. That's why I keep making the jokes about how Bo-Katan is becoming his space mom. We find out that the Night Owls have been hired for protection for the planet because, per the New Republic's charter, they aren't allowed to have their own native military force. They have a fairly large fleet, which we see later in the episode, mostly Imperial ships, all stolen under Bo-Katan's leadership in previous seasons and before the events of Season 1. And the whole domed city is meant to give you a vibe for the Mandalore planet, like the domed cities of Mandalore, foreshadowing the whole idea that they're going to retake the planet very soon. They're greeted at the spaceport by a very dark R2-D2 and C-3PO reference, like these are meant to be a dark twist on the main R2 and 3PO unit, but this is actually an RA-7 droid. He's also known as a Death Star droid because these models were used on the Death Star. It appeared a couple times during A New Hope, which Mando comments on, saying why there's so many Imperial droids here, but it's all part of the New Republic amnesty program in them trying to rehabilitate all these former Imperial assets, Imperial people. The droid that was manning the PA system references the Coruscant Accords again. This is the second time. Those are the Accords that were signed as part of the formation of the New Republic after Return of the Jedi. All the planets in the galaxy that wanted to join the New Republic and gain access to all of its support and trade would have had to sign the Accords. Basically agreed to all the rules of being part of the New Republic. They scanned their chain codes. Remember, we saw those during Season 2 when Boba Fett showed Mando his chain code, proving that he was a Mandalorian. Also setting up the twist at the end of the episode where they find out that the chain code belongs to Christopher Lloyd's character, who is a former separatist. But before they can confront the Night Owls, who they're here to see, they're summoned to the Capitol by Jack Black and Lizzo, who are playing the administrators of the planet. The entire area here, the architecture, the vibe is just meant to be reminiscent of Lando's Cloud City when Han Solo, Chewbacca, Princess Leia, the others went there, and at first it seemed like a weirdly hostile but super nice place, like well kept, and gradually the situation turned against them as they discovered that the Empire Darth Vader had set a trap for them. Just like Christopher Lloyd's separatist character was trying to set a trap, take over the planet with the droids. And because we had the Corran at the beginning of the episode, you could call this like a big payoff on the Admiral Akbar meme. It's a trap. Just like the trap that Darth Vader laid for Luke Skywalker and his friends.
It's a trap!
In fact, later in the episode, Christopher Lloyd's character even almost references Anakin Skywalker before he's cut off short. We meet Jack Black and Lizzo, who are the leaders of the planet. There's so many guest stars in the episode. Jack Black is also playing Bowser literally right now in the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Just came out in theaters, so good timing on that. Maybe I'll do a video for that later this week. The huge banquet here is another reference to Darth Vader's invitation in Empire Strikes Back. We would be so glad if you joined us.
We would be honored if you would join us.
There's a bunch of familiar creatures at the banquet, but the one in the floating tank seemed new. It did seem kind of like a reference to Dune in the Spice Navigators. He makes a bantha joke, like address the elephant in the room, but we're talking about banthas because this is Star Wars. In the way he explains his backstory, they imply Jack Black's character used to be an Imperial Facilities Planning Officer during the original trilogy. When he says the war, he means the Galactic Civil War between the Empire and the Rebellion. He also went through the same New Republic amnesty program. You see he's still wearing the same pin on his jacket that Elia Kane and Dr. Pershing wear. And at the end of the episode, Christopher Lloyd's character also implies that he's just as corrupt as Elia Kane is, only pretending that he's been rehabilitated. Like, it takes to the end of the episode, but they do play it a little bit like there's meant to be a bit of doubt about his honesty. Like, is he trying to take advantage of his position, making Lizzo believe that he's in love with her, or is he actually being genuine? Jack Black tends to play a lot of characters like that. You wonder where their allegiance lies. Are they telling the truth? Are they telling you a lie? But part of this amnesty program, the whole idea that you're meant to question where their true allegiances lie, is why you see all the Stormtrooper gear all over the place. Like, a bunch of the troops are wearing Stormtrooper armor without the helmets. The whole question is whether or not this New Republic amnesty program actually works, because for the most part, it kind of doesn't seem like it works based on the last couple of episodes. Which does support the idea that Jack Black's character is also being kind of shady. Lizzo's character is meant to be the daughter of the previous ruler of the planet. It seems like she's meant to be genuinely a good person and not totally complicit if Jack Black's character is doing something shady. They agree to set up a meeting with the Night Owls, but first ask them to solve their little droid army problem, which we get to Christopher Lloyd's storyline. Got a little problem with a couple battle droids. When she says we thought they were rehabilitated, but they were not, that's also a reference to Elia Kane only pretending to be rehabilitated. Also the same with Christopher Lloyd's character too, because he was only pretending to be part of these different governments, but he'd been loyal to the Separatists the whole time. You also notice how formal they get here too, when Jack Black's character calls Bo-Katan Princess Kryze, another callback to her being the true princess of Mandalore, the ruler of Mandalore, which she talked about with Mando earlier. When she was a little girl, she grew up in the ruling family. So technically, Katie Sackhoff is kind of like a Disney princess now. If you see her at any conventions or any signings, you can ask her about this. I'm sure she has some thoughts about it. They said at the whole Grogu storyline, like they had to do something with him during the episode while they're busy trying to find out what's going on with the droids, and he stays with Lizzo. So they set up the whole idea that she wins him over quickly by promising treats. And when you really think about it, Grogu will probably do just about anything to get a treat. Also important, though, for their grand plan of retaking Mandalore, they also offer their help to Bo-Katan in getting the New Republic to recognize Mandalore as a sovereign system again, making it legitimate in their eyes, which would benefit them greatly, especially if they wound up in a giant conflict, a giant war, with the remnants of the Empire like Grand Admiral Thrawn and Moff Gideon. They made a big deal about that in last week's episode with Tim Meadows' character, like, oh, the planet, it's not part of the New Republic. Well, we really don't have time to help them. When she asks Mando how he feels about things, I love his reaction too. He says, "You had me at battle droids."
You had me at battle droids.
Because Mando hates droids, he would love any opportunity to try and stick it to them. We meet Christopher Lloyd's character, like the next major cameo in a cameo-heavy episode, who's playing the head of security of the planet. His name is Hellgate, which, with a name like that, no wonder he winds up being the true villain of the episode. It'd be like a movie naming someone Captain Evil Guy. I wonder who's going to be the bad person here. Oh, probably the evil guy. He says all the former Imperial droids, the Separatist droids on the planet, were taken originally from the ones that were going to be scrapped at Carthon. That's the same planet during Season 2 where Bill Burr's character had been sent to work detail, and the New Republic were scrapping tons of stuff, even going back to the Clone Wars and the Separatists. When they show the montage of the droids rebelling, you see a bunch of different ones. There's B-1 battle droids from the prequels, from Clone Wars. This land speeder seems like a souped-up, nicer version of Luke Skywalker's land speeder. They also have a chef droid, which we saw in Episode 1 on the streets in Navarro. And even though Christopher Lloyd's character is withholding information because he's behind all these attacks, he's not wrong when he says the reason why he didn't shut down all the droids is because the people of the planet had become dependent on them because the droids do all the work. This is part of the idea that even though he is meant to be the villain of the episode because he's a separatist, he's trying to take over the planet, when he says the planet has become corrupt, everyone's grown fat and lazy and no one wants to work anymore, he's being truthful about that. Also, the other side reason why he didn't press the button is because that was like a fail-safe device which would cause all the battle droids to revert to their former programming and really start going after everyone. Like, there are a couple reasons why I'm not pressing this giant red button here. They have another Cloud City Empire Strikes Back reference when they travel to the lower levels to get help from the Ugnaughts. Empire Strikes Back, they also have been relegated to menial work in the bowels of the city. There's even a more direct reference to that when you see the pieces of the C-3PO droid in the background here, like the ones in Empire Strikes Back when they found 3PO in pieces. Mando makes a couple more cracks about why you shouldn't trust droids, why he hates them, with a few exceptions like IG-11 and now R5-D4, even though technically R5-D4 kind of sold them out to Carson Teva's character. Ultimately, that wound up leading to something good though. In the Ugnaughts workshop, they have a bunch of the larger super battle droids. There's a couple other Easter eggs too, like this droid actually seems like the same model as the droid from the Jedi ship in Clone Wars, who held the designs of every single lightsaber that had ever been created. Now obviously it's not the exact same droid, it's just the same type of model. Mando wins their help with a big callback mentioning Kuiil, the Ugnaught from Season 1, saying their catchphrase, "I have spoken," which makes it sound like that's a bigger part of their culture and it wasn't just something cool that Kuiil would do on his own. The Ugnaughts reveal what's really been happening. There's nothing wrong with the droids, they're not rebelling. It was Christopher Lloyd's character ultimately who was forcing them to wreak havoc on the city with nano droids from the Techno Union, another big prequels reference. They do play this for a little comedy too, like their interpersonal dynamics with Mando acting as the point man, like the true diplomat, because Bo-Katan has either lost her patience or has no patience for diplomacy to begin with, but she does do a pretty decent job at the end of the episode. So I think when the situation demands it, she can be the diplomat. Bo-Katan references the Clone Wars again when seeing all the battle droids because she was featured so heavily in the Clone Wars episodes. Mando saying that he's also seen the battle droids is a callback to his childhood when he was rescued by the Death Watch Mandalorians originally while his village was being attacked by the battle droids during the Clone Wars, which they also reference again at the end of the episode when Cass Woes tries to tell him that he's not a true Mandalorian because he wasn't born Mandalorian. And Bo-Katan sets him straight, saying being a Mandalorian isn't about your blood, it's about the creed, it's about walking the way of the true Mandalore. Maybe at some point we'll get some more Mando flashbacks. We haven't really seen his childhood too much, but we don't get that much time during episodes. The voice of this battle droid is the same voice of the prequels and the Clone Wars episodes, like the same voice of all battle droids. It's basically Matthew Wood. They do try to do that where they bring characters back who did voices for very common characters during the prequels or during the Clone Wars episodes. It's a little bit easier to bring someone back like that from the older episodes or the older movies when it's just a voice over a cameo. Mando tests them out by kicking them around because remember, he hates droids, so he kind of enjoys what's happening here. Finding one that has been reprogrammed by the nanobots, which starts attacking them, starting a big Mando chase scene with Bo-Katan through the city. A lot of the big action scenes in pretty much all the episodes, not just this episode, but all episodes, are just meant to be Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni showing off what they can do with special effects now. If you go back and you watch the previous episodes, that's why all the different action scenes seem like they are meant to evolve from previous seasons, and during the different episodes, they try to show you very different types of action scenes. Like there were a lot of city-based action scenes, like big chase scenes in this episode. Also some really cool Mandalorian on Mandalorian fight scenes too, like some red-hot jetpack on jetpack action. You have to imagine Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni storyboarding episodes, planning out ideas, just playing with their action figures. When they're running through the city, you see a bunch of the different types of droids, references to the prequels. A couple of them seem like newer models, but most of them are deep cuts for either the prequels movies or for the original trilogy. These droids seem like the newer version of the EV-99 droids. There are a bunch of them in the episode. There's also a mouse droid that they run past, another droid that was on the Death Star, more Imperial droids, remember. There's another one of these souped-up versions of Luke Skywalker's land speeder. They have the same hot rod-looking speeder bikes that they used in the Book of Boba Fett on Tatooine. They actually said that these were actually supposed to be a reference to the cars in George Lucas's American Graffiti movie. That was the movie that he did before he did Star Wars. Also starred a very young Harrison Ford. When they eventually chase it down, these droids that show up, the floating ones, are just called Constable droids. They find a spark pad, which leads them to the droids-only bar, which obviously is a big joke on A New Hope, the line in the cantina. We don't serve their kind here, but here, they only serve their kind. Also, the whole name of the bar, the resistor, is meant to be a reference to mechanical resistors like you would put in a machine like droids, and the idea of resisting, rebelling, because it's the whole theme of the episode, rebelling droids. As they walk into the bar, there's another Gonk droid behind them in the alleyway. All the droids in here, and there are many of them, are Easter eggs and references, deep cuts for the original trilogy, the prequels. Seriously, there are so many Easter eggs in here. Zoom in and hands all over the room here. They have another chef droid. The bartender is one of those other more advanced EV-99 droids, which I think is meant to be a callback to EV-99 from the original trilogy being the new bartender in the Mos Eisley Cantina. You remember that scene was actually a stealth cameo scene from Mark Hamill, who was doing the voice of EV-99. You wouldn't have recognized it unless they told you though, like it didn't sound like Mark Hamill. I'm not sure where these droids appear before, but they seem familiar. This one is the same model that Greef Karga was using. He's based on the original Ralph McQuarrie concept art for C-3PO, just done in silver. On the left here and in the background is a CZ droid from A New Hope. They're actually featured a couple times during A New Hope, like there were a pair of droids that got separated in the desert. That's how one wound up in the Jawa Sandcrawler and another wound up in Mos Eisley walking past Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. That one was also played by Anthony Daniels, who does do a lot of stealth cameo scenes as protocol droids, not always C-3PO droids, but other droids like C-3PO. In the back, there's a blue C-3PO, a yellow R5, battle droids, and the one with the red eyes looks familiar, but I can't remember exactly which movie they used him in, so if you think you know, write it below in the comments. There's two R2 units. The white droid is the same model that was interrogating or talking to Dr. Pershing as part of his rehabilitation, and the one behind him is another black RA-7 Death Star droid. They have another classic EV-99 droid talking to one of the newer versions. These are more of the same Jedi ship droids in the background, and when Mando and Bo-Katan go all good cop and bad cop on the bartender droid, I think that's meant to be a callback to EV-99 in Jabba's palace, threatening C-3PO and R2-D2 that if they didn't comply, they would be tortured.
Our master got angry with our last protocol droid and disintegrated him.
There's a couple of the classic Rex Star Tour droids, and there's another Gonk droid. There's a couple random ones here too that I can't totally place, so if you think you recognize some of these, post them in the comments below. They make another Clone Wars reference to the Separatists, in the way he explains it, the bartender droid says most of the droids, like these old droids that have been rehabilitated on the planet, are eager for the second chance and redemption, which is also the journey that Bo-Katan is on right now. It's meant to be a parallel for her, redeeming herself and uniting all Mandalorians. He explains the droids only consume something called Nepenthe. That's actually a fictional medication that appears in Allan Poe's The Raven, also in Greek mythology. Within the context of the Edgar Allan Poe story, it's a concoction which would cause the writer in that story to lose memory of his lost love. Within the context of the episode, though, the substance actually reprograms the droids because it's been poisoned with the nanobots from the Techno Union. And that's what's been causing them to rebel, to resist. Another callback to the name of the bar, The Resistor. Christopher Lloyd's Separatist character has a very dark sense of humor that he's using the Resistor bar to do this. When they go to get more information, they're using a former interrogation droid painted white, which reverts to its former programming, attacking them. Mando destroys it with the Darksaber, whipping it out for the first time in a while. It also doesn't feel heavy in his hands. He didn't have any trouble using it like he did earlier. A lot of people asking about why this is, and that's because of the way the Darksaber works. Because you're talking about the Force here, it's just another kind of lightsaber. The blade responds to the emotions of the wielder, so the more sure of your actions, the more sure of your purpose, the easier it is for people to wield it. The reason why Mando had trouble using it sometimes is because he had doubt about his actions. He wasn't sure what he was trying to do or what his path was. Here, when he's just reacting automatically, trying to save Bo-Katan and the other girl here, because he's so sure of himself, it's much easier for him to use it. It's also why Bo-Katan had such an easy time using it when she was saving Mando, because she was very sure of what she was doing. She's very clear of purpose. It doesn't really have anything to do with Bo-Katan or Mando being Force-sensitive. You don't actually need to be Force-sensitive to use the Darksaber. But him whipping it out is also meant to foreshadow the end of the episode too, when he gives it to Bo-Katan. They follow the trail back to Christopher Lloyd's Hellgate character who had ordered the nanobots from the Techno Union that were illegal because he's still a separatist, forcing the droids to revolt, because he felt like the planet had become corrupt. And when they confront him on it, he explains that he'd always hated the former Republic, like we're talking about before the prequels, claiming that they were a corrupt government. The Empire was also a corrupt government, and it sounds like he also probably thinks the New Republic is just as bad, revealing that he had stayed loyal to the Separatist movement this entire time, even after their defeat during the Clone Wars. And he's not wrong, though. The Republic had grown corrupt, the Empire was also corrupt, and watching the last few episodes, the New Republic doesn't seem that much better. His whole speech about supporting true democracy, the ideals of the Separatists, is a callback to Count Dooku, who started the Separatists. We literally references calling him a visionary. If you watch the Tales of the Jedi episodes, a big callback to Bryce Dallas Howard too, a bit of an Easter egg because she directed this episode. She also does the voice of Yaddle, who's very critical to Count Dooku's story during Tales of the Jedi. It tells the story of how Count Dooku fell to the dark side and what happened to Yaddle ultimately. But during that, you see Count Dooku's arc and why he started the Separatists in the first place. The whole idea is that Count Dooku had good intentions, like he felt like the Republic had become corrupt and they needed a better government, but Emperor Palpatine took advantage of that and the Separatists became pawns in his plan to take over the galaxy. So in a sense, Christopher Lloyd's character believes in good things, he's just done terrible things in service of those ideals. We'll probably continue to see a lot of that from different characters on both sides of things, like the former Empire, the people that are part of the New Republic right now. And then Bo-Katan takes him out right as he's about to reference Anakin Skywalker when he was about to say Count Dooku was literally and metaphorically cut down by the Jedi Enforcer, Anakin Skywalker, like he literally cut his hands off and then cut his head off.
Do it.
When we go back to Jack Black and Lizzo's characters, it seems like they're playing the Star Wars version of croquet with living creatures, and that felt like a reference to Alice in Wonderland, where the Queen of Hearts used living creatures to play croquet, with a little bit of help from Grogu using the Force to allow her to win. When they confront Christopher Lloyd's character again, he uses the same expression, the quack to calling the stifling slimy. Boba Fett used that insult during Season 2. Cad Bane also used that term during the Book of Boba Fett.
Well, if that isn't the quack to calling the stifling slimy.
If that's not the quack to calling the stifling slimy.
Seriously, at some point we're going to need a Star Wars book of slang. He calls out Jack Black for perverting Plaisir 15 since arriving, implying that he's still Imperial, kind of like Elia Kane is still technically loyal to the Imperials. The moon Parkat that they exile him to is also a brand new place in the Star Wars universe that they created for the episode. You notice that when Lizzo is addressing them, she addresses Mando as being from Concordia, a formal title because they're going to make good on their offer to help legitimize the Mandalorian's claim to Mandalore. Maybe at some point we'll see a flashback to Concordia too. They also give them the key to the city. I actually expected Bo-Katan to beat Cass Woes with that, like beat him silly with the actual key, but I guess they didn't want to be that on the nose with it. When she says they'll always be welcome here in the city, I think she's also foreshadowing that Bo-Katan the Mando will come back to get the Ugnaughts' help with their IG-11 droid problem, because during the episode several times they reference how the Ugnaughts are renowned for their droid work. When she knights Grogu, part of their ancient order, obviously that's meant to be a reference to him becoming a Jedi Knight, even though he's also becoming a Mandalorian right now, and it kind of seems like he left the Jedi Order. Rewarded for his help in her winning the games. The sword design and the hilt look kind of familiar, so if you think you recognize where this blade or the hilt comes from in some other movie, post it in the comments below. When they meet the Night Owls, they play the Night Owls theme song from Season 2. You see Moff Gideon's cruiser, the Imperial transport that they also stole in that same episode, Season 2, Episode 3, and a couple smaller Mandalorian fighters like the one Bo-Katan flies. Also, when Bo-Katan challenges Cass Woes for leadership, the music they play for the fight is also the same music track they use in their mission in Season 2, Episode 3. It winds up being a pretty solid fight, like the fight choreography is pretty good. They want to show you what it looks like when a couple Mandalorians fight each other using all their different Mandalorian tech, like the jetpacks, the grappling hooks, the flamethrowers, the energy shields. And after she beats him, he throws the darksaber in her face, trying to get her to challenge Mando for it in combat. Mando tries to slide it through on a technicality, and technically he is not wrong. The scavenger defeated him even though it wasn't honorable combat. He lost the darksaber then, and she won it from the scavenger, even though technically she picked it up off the ground. Like I said, they're playing it real fast and loose, kind of a technicality, so you could question the legitimacy of this. But I think in the episode, the whole idea is that they want to unite all these Mandalorians by the end of the season, so they end the episode wanting you to think that she owns the darksaber rightfully. She gives them a really great rally speech about how they need to all follow the way to take Mandalore to become one people. They'll be much stronger together than apart. And generally reminds them about what it is to be a true Mandalorian. It isn't so much about where you're born into, it's all about the creed and following the true way of the ancient Mandalore. And when Mando actually physically gives her the darksaber, that's meant to be a direct callback to the Star Wars Rebels episode where Sabine Wren gave Bo-Katan the darksaber, and it was a very similar type of reaction too, where a bunch of Mandalorians were rallying together.
And for all of Mandalore.
You have to remember, though, this is just one group of Mandalorians. These are just the Night Owls. There are many groups of Mandalorians. There are only 2 episodes left, so we'll probably find out about some of the other groups in next week's episode. We also have to find out what really happened to Moff Gideon. There's still lots of theories about that. We have to find out what happened to Dr. Pershing, what's going on with Elia Kane, and they have to actually physically go back to Mandalore the planet, all of them, including the Armorers group. So I feel like they'll have at least one episode to explain fully what's going on with Moff Gideon on his side of things, the Empire side of things, and tease Grand Admiral Thrawn in another episode like the finale where they pay off all the Mandalorians coming together on Mandalore, where you see the Mythosaur. If you spotted any other Easter eggs or references in the episode that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. There were a bunch of prequels references in the episode. I'll do a Mandalorian Season 3 Episode 7 trailer video that should post in the next day, and my full Episode 7 video will post next week after they release it. There were a bunch of other trailers that I'm still working on. There's a bunch of stuff that happened this week, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that. Click here for that episode 7 video. I'll update the link as soon as I post it, and click here for all my Mandalorian episode videos. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe. This is The Way.